Good evening and welcome to our opening summer virtual film event. I'm Sydney Stowe, Director of Film at Dartmouth, and I wanted to tell you about why we chose this particular guest and show to begin our summer season. In fall of 2016, we played Hamilton's America to a sold-out crowd in Spalding. The director, Alex Horwitz, was due to come and do a Q&A after the screening, and unfortunately, something came up. He had a baby on the way, and there was a little bit of an issue, and he had to regret. So we ended up bringing in Joanne Freeman, a Hamilton expert, and the show went off without a hitch. But Mr. Horowitz very kindly sent us something to tide us over until we could actually meet him. So we're going to play that tape because this is what the audience got to see in fall of 16.
Hey Dartmouth, I am so sorry to not be with you tonight, but my second child is coming any day now, and he decided to keep us on our toes and get a little antsy, so we're on baby watch. But you're gonna have fun without me. I'm so excited you get to watch this film. You get some extra goodies in the end credits that were not in the broadcast, so look for those. But really, you don't need me there, because the star of this movie is the other guy, the guy who wrote the...
What's up, Dartmouth? Dartmouth, babies having babies. Enjoy the movie.
So we are thrilled, because even though we can't have you live, we can at least have you virtually. So welcome finally to the Hopkins Center and to Dartmouth, Alex Horowitz.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
So I wanted to just see how you're doing, because this is the weirdest time ever, and I don't know how you're working. And we talked a little bit before, and I wanted to ask you about what you had just gotten under the wire before the travel restrictions went in. We pointed people to your website, but this is a brilliant photo, and I would love you to talk a little bit about this project, because it was, for those of us that don't know, the Invictus Games in, the US.
Yeah, well, as your shrewd audience can see, that's plainly me teaching John Bon Jovi how to play the guitar, because he really needed lessons. I started working with John and the band on a project right before all this, which we can get into a little later, because we'll talk about documentary work. It was going to be a documentary. The first stop along that journey for that documentary was going to be this trip he did to London, because he was re-recording a charity single that he'd written about soldiers suffering from PTSD, and no longer Prince Harry, or as John Bon Jovi likes to say, the artist formerly known as Prince Harry. It was a good line, John. He invited John to re-record the song with the choir for his Invictus Games. It's sort of the British equivalent of the Wounded Warrior Project, if people know that. So no longer Prince Harry hosts this annual Olympiad for wounded and disabled veterans. Right. And the song obviously had a lot to do with that population. So right. They recorded, that room is the Beatles studio. That's Abbey Road Studio 2. John said, oh, we're going to be kind of fighting for real estate with the Prince's news crew, and then we'll have this music video crew. I said, wait, music video crew, is that your crew? He said, oh yeah, we're going to shoot a music video of it. Sort of a documentary style music video. I said, documentary style music video, do you have a director? He said, no, we don't. I said, okay, hear me out, John. One crew for you, and I do the documentary we're making and your music video. So that was a still from behind the scenes of that. Right. And that is up on YouTube. So that's what that was. That was a fun one to get in under the wire, and it was about a week later that you could no longer fly to the UK. Right.
And we've got a link to your website, so you can see it, because it's fantastic. It was really moving. So
it was one of those ones where you just turn the camera on those people, and I say those people, those veterans, those people singing their hearts out, and they are not actors, and it is written in their faces, and in some cases in their bodies, and the injuries that are very visible. You can't fake that. So I didn't want to do much. We just turned the camera on it. We shot it very beautifully with wonderful lenses, and let them tell the story.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So is it going to be a documentary? Is it turning into that?
I hope. I mean, we'll just sort of speaks to the "what are you working on next" question, which we can start.
So
we can start the evening off with instead. But yeah, I mean, we would, like I said, we had started and we just sort of shut it down.
Right.
John and I had just shot a few days, and we were beginning to, we were just getting going right away while we simultaneously tried to find a distribution home for it. But it was all to be a sort of documentary project in tandem with his new album, which he was going to be touring with right now. I was supposed to be on tour right now with Bon Jovi. But we may come back to it one day. The album is delayed until the fall. The tour was canceled. To John's credit, he said people don't need their money tied up in concert tickets right now. So he just gave everyone a refund, and he would love to do it one day. I would love to make a movie with him one day. But it was gonna be cool. It was gonna be more than a usual behind the music kind of doc. They're very contemporary songs about some very serious issues, and we were gonna sort of explore those issues with the band. And that was the conceit for the doc. So not happening, but maybe happening one day soon.
But last Friday, probably one of the bright spots of COVID is, Hamilton the musical dropped on Disney Plus.
Wait, it did?
At one point we were watching it Friday morning and it started to stutter and we were like, oh my God, how many millions of people are actually watching this right now?
Right.
And so we had your film first, and what amazes me, and we talked about this separately, but when you shot that film, and I obviously read a ton about it, there were 100 hours of footage, and the final product is about 84 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So was that your call, what to put in and what to put out? Because I know it seems like there were other players in the mix with PBS and Miranda, and I was just curious.
It was several people's mutual call, but ultimately mine. Yeah, I'm a big fan of short movies. I really am. That comes from my years as an editor. I was leading up to that movie. I'd been editing mostly documentaries for about 8 years, and I am always saying, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. So it's hard to kill your darlings, but it's easier if you were an editor first, I think.
And that you got props from one of the reviewers about the fact that you figured out that no one needs to see people standing around in a room singing in a rehearsal room.
Which is not to say that can't be a compelling documentary. It can be, and there are some very good examples of a sort of, I'll call it the 5, 6, 7, 8, how does a show come together kind of musical. There are some really good ones. That was not the conceit of my film. That was not the business of that movie. So I just wanted to spend the real estate on other things. And I'm a big fan of the old adage, leave them wanting more. And nobody ever said a movie was too short. So they might have said they wanted it to be longer, but that's different. So that's kind of a good review. So I thought, let's keep it tight and snappy. I mean, PBS initially ordered an hour, and Lynn and I said, it's a feature, trust us. And they were like, oh, what does that mean? So I said, no, it's not going to be a 3-hour epic. I'm like, it's an hour and a half with time for your promotional PBS stuff. So that was a window of minutes that we could hit. We hit 84. So in the end, there was like maybe 30 seconds that I grudgingly cut, but I was happy to hit a shorter length. Yeah.
Right. And what was interesting about it was that it came through on PBS. That was the piece that I thought was so interesting, that you didn't have all these other people come calling. I would have assumed, knowing that Hamilton was being made, that there would have been other venues or distributors interested. Was PBS a place of freedom for you to do it there? Because you knew it would have a massive, isn't it the biggest or most watched documentary on PBS? Ken Burns is not listening.
It was, I know it was the most watched great performances since The Three Tenors, which your students will not remember, but the rest of it was a big deal. But it also may have, I think, over the course of its airing for a year, PBS had it broadcast for 2 years. I think it may have eclipsed Three Tenors eventually. Their biggest piece of programming ever. Don't quote me on that. I don't know about that one, but it was up there. It was up there for sure. And that's because it was Hamilton. That's not through any particular genius of mine. You say Hamilton and people want to tune in. So PBS was a place of freedom insofar as, in general, I think they're a place that's going to they're more likely to support the artist maybe than than in other places. They weren't the only game in town. We did have some offers from other places. PBS was the right one, though. PBS had a pre-existing relationship with Lin because they had done, speaking of the 5, 6, 7, 8 behind-the-scenes docs, they did a very good hour-long documentary on In the Heights, which was Lin's first.
Okay. Right.
So that was very comfortable for Lin and all of the producers of the show. It was mostly the same top production staff. So it was home for them, and I'm a public broadcasting kid. My dad comes from radio, National Public Radio, and I was a PBS kid, so it just made a lot of sense. And we went. If you're doing, look, you're very close to the home of somebody in whose shadow I walk, Mr. Ken Burns. So if you're doing a documentary about American history and musical theater, I was like, well, you go to the home of Ken Burns and great performances. It's just sort of a no-brainer. Yeah. Well,
and for those people who don't know, even though the film is in the vault, there's, what do we think, like 50 minutes of content still.
Yeah, I was actually very pleasantly surprised. Once upon a time, there were only a few clips on the PBS website, but I think it was through their the show's partnership with the Gilder Lehrman Institute. I think it's Gilder Lehrman Institute for American History, something like that. They're the educational initiative. They're the educational nonprofit that's behind EduHam, which is, of course, the show's amazing program to bring the musical to an audience of Title I students who don't usually get to see it. There's this amazing educational curriculum where they dramatize their own scenes from American history, and then I'll go to see Hamilton. It's a great program in New York, but I believe it tours with the touring company. So so that because of that partnership, they've now been able to put much more of my documentary on the PBS website for educational purposes, and they have all these great sort of classroom conversation starters.
And that ensures the legacy too, because it's an incredible resource.
Yeah, I'm very glad that they were able to do that, because like I said before, it was just a few clips, and now it's a lot of clips. It's most of the movie that's up there. Not in any order that I had edited it in, but that's fine. That's fine. It's repurposed into a curriculum, so that's great.
Yeah,
and I should say, one day we do hope that the film will be re-released in its entirety. It's just tied up right now in long legal conversations that I don't want to bore you with, but the initiative is there. We hope to get it out again one day.
Okay. And I know we're going to revisit this when we bring in the students. So I actually want to shift to your second feature film, Autonomy, which I had so many thoughts around self-driving cars, and I am a car child. I'm a product of Detroit, and I love this poster. That's why we had to put it up. But I wanted to, I love Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm just, how did that project happen? And I have two questions about Autonomy, but I enjoyed it so immensely, and I couldn't believe how much I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And it has changed so much of my thinking about self-driving cars. So I wanted to know how this project came about, and where did you land at the end of that project for yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I'm glad it changed your thinking. I suppose that was the conceit. I came to it not as a car guy. I'm not. But Car and Driver magazine had this pre-existing relationship with Malcolm Gladwell, whose work obviously I did know. What I did not know about Malcolm is that he is a real old school car snob, real gearhead. And he had a lot of thoughts on the matter. I came to it as a bit of a tech nerd and certainly a sci-fi geek, so I had some preconceived notions. I was maybe a little better educated on automated vehicles than your average audience member. But I quickly realized that that's very relative, because in my experience, most people can tell you little to nothing with any accuracy about this industry and about this invention. And I was fascinated by it, not because I'm a car guy, I'm not, but because I thought it was a movie about us, not cars, about how we define ourselves through the things we make, about automation in general. And that's everything from railroads to elevators to computers to smartphones. I mean, it's a big conversation, and if we could just use the automated vehicle as a sort of vessel for that conversation, I thought that would be interesting. And also because I was excited because we were kind of first. There's been quite a bit of TV journalism on it, but not real documentary work, if I can make a distinction there. And it was and obviously it was exciting to collaborate with Malcolm. So very different kind of film from Hamilton's America, very different subject matter, but also completely different, I don't know what to say, style of filmmaking. There are probably things that make it similar because it came from my brain, but very different structurally, completely different plan of attack and how we produce it. It was a very different project. But yeah, hopefully the goal was to get people who don't know much about it to know much about it all of a sudden. I mean, I didn't really make it for the dyed-in-the-wool car fans, but they can watch it too and enjoy it. I was sort of agnostic on it. I suppose I trend slightly pro-tech, but that's also a misleading statement because traditional cars are also tech. But I just wanted people to think about it because my premise is that love them or hate them, it doesn't matter. They're here. You know, you might not like flying. The airplane is here. So it's coming, and I believe it's something that will have the potential to really change the fabric of existence and our daily lives. And I think all of us just need to be better educated on it. So if I could educate you in a hopefully entertaining way, in again about 80 minutes, then the movie will have accomplished something, I think.
Well, you know what we're going to do now that we've set it up? We're going to run the trailer so people can see it. Great.
Driving is an extraordinarily satisfying activity for those who choose to invest in it. Now we're at the dawn of driverless cars, and we're about to redefine that dramatically. And as we give over control of our mobility, we may be giving over more than we realize. That's what we're looking at for the future of cars.
I remember when this was science fiction, and here we are.
I thought technical objects could have a sense of vision and do their own decisions. People thought I'm crazy.
Oh, dear Jesus! I could never! Ah!
No autonomous truck's gonna take my job. I just don't think we're ready for it yet.
No matter what, there will always be nostalgists. They want to live in a log cabin and drive a 74 Camaro.
We didn't evolve to spend an hour and a half every day sitting in a metal box. This is a technology to give people back time.
The question is, how much will we allow machines to screw up? What is our threshold for that?
There are significant costs to the individual and significant benefits to society at large. There's a lot to be excited about, and you need to know what's coming.
Yeah, come on, that was freaking awesome. Let's see the autonomous car do that.
It was, yeah. I cannot recommend enough. Everyone, if you haven't seen it, it's on Amazon, and you will never look at a car or even a car accident the same way again. I mean, for me, that was the piece, the human element of it. I was all about, no, I want the freedom. And now having learned more about the statistics that we don't see in the media, I've really begun to wonder where I stand on the whole concept of this technology now that it's here. But it was like, I can't even envision a car looking like getting in a car and not having a steering wheel. I mean, yeah. And then there's that great interview with the 16-year-old girl who's like, oh, I got up late, so I just took Waymo. And that there's a generation of kids growing up in Arizona that are completely fine with driverless cars and just getting a ride to school.
Right.
And are not even in a hurry to get their license.
Yeah.
Just like that's heresy to me.
Yeah. Well, look, there was a generation that said they would never set foot in the motor car because they wanted to be in their horse-drawn carriages. A generation that said they'd never get in a box that takes you up and down a tall building.
To say the elevator.
Yeah,
ATM.
Given that, right, ATM, which we talk about in the movie. I don't trust that thing with my money.
Right. Exactly.
There's obviously a visceral, primal difference when we're talking about something that potentially could harm you. But I took it as a given that, every generation has experiences some version of, kids today, I don't get it.
Right.
Whether that's about pop culture or technology or whatever it is, it was always thus. So that's an old song, and this is just sort of the latest rendition of it.
Right.
But I thought that was fruitful material for a documentary.
Well, thank you, and thank you because it's yeah, you're right. I think it's the first one on the topic, and so like I said, we're car families, so we keep an eye out on those kind of movies. I think we're going to bring in the students now. We've got two film and theater lovers that want to join in on the conversation.
My kind of people.
Exactly. I think we're going to I've got Katie Ornstein, who's coming in, and she's got questions for you. And Ariel Isednu, he's coming in. And I don't know, Ariel, do you want to start first? Tell us a little bit about yourself and give us the question.
Absolutely. So my name is Ariel, and I'm a filmmaker at 22 at Dartmouth. And my question is, where do you really feel your voice lies within Hamilton's America?
Where does my voice lie within it? Wow. Thank you for presuming that I have one in it. There's, I suppose, there are two answers. One is, how would I answer that just as a documentarian in general? There are no rules for a documentarian's presence in their film. Some documentarians make themselves a lead character, sort of the Michael Moore approach. Some are very withdrawn and have no presence, a much more of a, I would say, a journalistic approach, although journalism can also be very biased, of course. There's Ken Burns, whose voice you never hear, and yet those movies are very scripted. They're totally narrated, and that's an author's point of view. I felt, so far in both movies I've made, I'm not a presence. I'm sure that I have a voice in it, though. So this is the second part of it. What is my point of view, and how does that trickle in? I don't do any of the speaking for the actors. I don't write any narration in my films so far, so I'm not putting my voice in that way. Yeah, maybe I fed Lin a line or two that he thought was good, and he said on camera, but only if it felt organic to him. So, in interview, I will say this, sidebar. In interview, a good documentarian gets good at shaping an interview, not to put words in the mouth of their subject, but that's reality TV, but to craft the conversation and steer it, and get, if not get the actual words, get the talking points they think they're going to get. Of course, you can be surprised, and you can improvise with someone in an interview or on set, as you just saw in that picture, going out to Valley Forge and having fun with the cast of Hamilton. And you joke around, and you maybe feed them an idea, and it turns into conversation. So in that sense, you can, as a documentarian, tease a scene into being about something. Some documentarians would tell you that must never be done. You must only be a fly on the wall. Depending on the sort of thing I'm filming, I might have that attitude. There certainly have been rooms and instances where I'm a fly on the wall. It's not my job to have any opinion. It's my job to be quiet. If I'm filming a rehearsal, or that's not my business. I'm not part of the company of Hamilton, and I don't want to get in the way of my friends. But if I'm out on one of our field trips at a site of historic significance, that's because I've engineered that scene as a filmmaker, and I'm able to insert my voice by way of asking certain questions, suggesting something. Why don't you go over there and do that? Certainly, where I put the camera, we got to. If I did my job well, we got to make these nice cinematic little journeys into 18th century settings in Hamilton's America, for example. I'll give you a good example, of total manipulation on the part of a filmmaker. You just saw at the end of my Autonomy trailer, that guy from the driving club saying, "Let's see an autonomous car do that." Well, I fed him the line, of course, because I knew I had footage of an autonomous car doing that. But I leveled with the guy. I was like, "What do you think of that line?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I would totally say that." So he says it, and then afterwards I told him, "By the way, dude, I'm going to cut that with that." And he was like, "Oh man, you got me." But we were all in on it together. I'm never there to pull the wool over the eyes of one of my subjects to make them say something they wouldn't otherwise say. So I'm rambling on here a bit. But the last thing I'd say is just more broadly, sort of 30,000 foot view. What's my position? I had ideas I wanted to get across in Hamilton's America. I knew it wasn't going to be about how a show comes together. That texture would be in there. But my agenda was more about telling history through the lens of Lin and his company of players. I wanted to draw these connections through the cutting, really, of between Hamilton's story and the Revolution and what Lin and his company of players were doing. Those are not equal activities. A Bloody Revolution is not a revolutionary show on Broadway. But I could draw dramatic connections by cutting it a certain way, by juxtaposing certain ideas, certain scenes from the past with scenes from the present, and then scenes from the show. Because until last Friday, Hamilton's America was the best way to see scenes from Hamilton. So I hope that's an answer to your question. But I'd say it's through the conception of the conceptualization of the piece, and through the editing because I don't write narration. That's a shorter answer.
Thank you. Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Orenstein. I am also a 22, and I know Ariel through film stuff, and I'm also very involved in theater on campus. So something that you mentioned in talking about Hamilton's America, and also right at the beginning with the John Bon Jovi project, is that you are the film person in a room with artists in other mediums. Although I will say, some of us are very excited about Tick Tick Boom and author filmmaker Lin-Manuel Miranda. Hopefully that can restart production soon. But in Hamilton's America, he is the theater guy and you are the film person, I guess. So my question is, in working with other creatives and other artists, but with very different expertises in different mediums, what are some of the tensions and challenges, and what are some of the joys in creating a film product with artists in other mediums?
I like that question. Thank you. I don't think I've ever gotten a question like that. Well, in the case of Hamilton's America, it helped that I went back with the production team. They're old friends. So that made for a more comfortable documentary process. Lin literally let me into the room where he was writing. Those scenes of Lin writing that are in Hamilton's America are scenes of Lin writing. And it's not that he wouldn't do that for somebody he didn't know as well, but it was even easier because he did know me. And it helps that I did theater. To say nothing of the fact that I did some theater with Lin in college, I know my way around theater from school. I come from a theater family. So I know how to be in those rooms and be out of the way. And I know what they're going through, and I can be respectful of that process. You know, Tommy Kail, the director of Hamilton, who also directed In the Heights, I also have known him for many years, and he told me, you know, he's had mixed results with cameras in his rooms. He said, look, I think you can agree, Alex, that the camera changes my process as a theater director. So of course, and I want to be out of the way. So we just sort of had to agree on, first of all, you'll see there weren't many rehearsals, because I don't think there were any rehearsals in Hamilton's America. I was in there for some creative meetings, but we had an agreement of like what I was going to be there to do and not to do, and we were going to limit the amount of time. That has helped on Hamilton's America. In the case of Bon Jovi, you know, I've been around musicians a lot. I've edited a lot of material of musicians. I've filmed a bit of it. I am not a musician myself, but there's a lot of music in my family, and I again, it's the same thing of just staying out of the way, so that they can do what they do. Knowing their process technically and creatively as much as possible allows me to know where to point the camera, what it is I want to get. Just knowing how a room is going to go before I walk into it is helpful. It also lets me get out of their way when I need to. But that also means I really appreciate what I'm looking at. I'm not just, you know, randomly pointing it at something extra. I'm nerding out. I'm geeking out behind my camera very often. I say my camera. Sometimes I do shoot second and third camera often, but or behind my cinematographer's shoulder. I mean, it's very fun and exciting to be in the room the moment something's happening. So I hope that's an answer to your question.
That's great.
Ariel, do you want to take a question from the chat?
Yeah, so we have one question from Hayes, and they said that what are some changes in technology about directing and video editing that are most exciting for you today?
Well, I mean, documentaries had all but completely gone digital by the time I was directing. That I suppose over the course of my editing career, things were mostly digital by then. I have cut on film as a student. I got to cut on 60mm black and white reversal stock. I did in the New York Film Academy, a program I think still exists, but I also did it as an undergraduate at Wesleyan. And I am very grateful for that experience, just sort of, for sure, the romance of it, and, you know, cutting film and putting it up in the bins. And I mean, that's exciting. But I also think it made me a better editor because you're actually physically cutting something. You have to be more careful with your decisions. Digital technology, I mean, I learned to edit that way, but I also in high school even was using like the earliest versions of Adobe Premiere. So I was learning analog and digital methods of editing at the same time as a teenager. And I'm grateful for that because I think both made me better at the other. And as that process has just gotten swifter and swifter, and it's much easier to just like plug a computer in or download a memory card, and like there's your increasingly cinematic, gorgeous film-like video. It's really nice. It's that sort of that instant gratification is very cool. Because back when I started editing, you have to render everything, and you were looking at a diluted version of your film until the very end, and that's still true, but it's less true. What you can get with a camera now, I mean, it looks great. I mean, that can also make us all lazy, so that's the bad side of this. But I'm shooting now, which I didn't think as I started my career as a director I was going to be doing much of. I learned it as a student. I never thought it was my strength, but there are now cameras that are compact and light and nimble enough for me to be focusing on but still be able to direct at the same time. Because the more complicated a camera is, I'm going to be like, wait, well, I can't do anything else because I got to figure out this. But it's easier now. Now, I still don't like being the primary camera on set. I have done that for a couple projects on a couple days. So that's an answer to your question. It's cameras are getting easier for camera idiots like me to use, and I've gotten much better at shooting because of that. But that also can make us complacent in other ways. Hope I answered the question.
I have a different question, which is, you mentioned earlier how you were a public media kid, and I think that's so awesome. And something that I was really excited about 4 years ago is that this big splashy thing that came with Hamilton and had extra footage and was part of, I don't know, I mean, it kind of came back to life last week, but like the Hamilton like publicity machine, I was so excited that it was attached to something that's connected to PBS. And I think public media is so important. I'm curious how you've navigated different distribution paths, because all of your projects have landed in different homes, whether that's festivals or public media or projects sort of commissioned in a way, how that creates different finished products, and just thoughts on like public media versus the sort of commercial film world.
Sure. I don't have a good answer for that is succinct, but I also don't want to ramble on here. I mean, it's a question of every project being so different. Not every project comes with the luxury of choice. And hey, where would you like to distribute this? You can have your pick of the litter. Very often it's who wants it, and that's like very often it's the only one place is going to pay for it, or only one place is going to do it but give you the money you need to make it. Other things you make first and sell later. That was the case with Autonomy. I am fortunate that both of my features I've done a number of different short things, including some narrative stuff, but both of my feature documentaries have premiered at reputable festivals, which was nice. That helped just turn eyes to it in a good way. Like, Hamilton's America was scheduled to premiere on PBS, but about a week and a half before that, we premiered at the New York Film Festival, which was perfect because it's such a New York story. And I was there, and Lin was there, and everything. And that was a great way to kick off such a New York movie. We took it to a festival knowing we didn't need to get a distribution deal. It was about to be on TV. That's very rare. Autonomy was a little more traditional in that we made it. I was fortunate that it was all paid for in advance by Car and Driver, but they're not a film distributor. They said, we'll take it to festivals. And we got into South by Southwest, which was a place that made a lot of sense for that movie. And on the heels of that, it wasn't like we walked away from Austin with a deal, but it was seen at Austin, and because of the festival premiere, we got it bought, and we had offers from a couple places. But it's also weird, we got a distribution deal, and then we had a very limited theatrical run, which is not something I ever thought I was going to do for one of my documentaries. I don't think many people saw it that way, but then lo and behold, a few months later, it was on Amazon Prime, and that was all part of the same long game. There are other movies that go and have a huge bidding war, and boom, they're on Netflix, and they sold for $10 million, and everything on a budget of $100, and everything in between. Documentaries are even more unpredictable than narrative films in that regard. There is no one correct path for film, and no one way they get made. So I'm still learning with each project I make. I think I know how one's going to go, and then we zig instead of zag. And it's exciting and frustrating that we are quite literally reinventing it for every project we do.
I think my question is, how do you feel you are evolving as a filmmaker? And tell us a little bit about your zombie short film, and what do you think of that work now?
Well, thank you for mentioning my zombie short film. You know, yeah, I mean, I mentioned that I'm a sci-fi geek. I mean, documentaries were never a stated goal. As long as I've been sentient, I think I wanted to be a filmmaker. And I'm still, you know, chasing the scripted dreams, and I write stuff, and I made my zombie short that did pretty well on the genre film festival circuit. But then I just sort of got my foot in the door with documentaries. So just the fact that I was doing documentaries was a bit of an evolution as a filmmaker. I don't draw much of a distinction. To me, movies are movies, and I think that there's no one kind of movie I like, and no one kind of filmmaking I like. So to me, I don't. Yes, I've done 2 features. They're both documentaries, but I will, even if I get to do big scripted narrative films one day, I will always think of these as my first 2 films. So how am I evolving? I mean, sure, I think I mentioned I'm a better shooter now, for sure. Every day I shoot, I get much better, and I'm actually now comfortable going out. If it's a long documentary and we can't afford a great shooter every day of a shoot, because documentary shoots are very long usually, like, okay, I can handle this one by myself. I'm much more comfortable doing that. That's a good evolution. I think in the edit room, my years as an editor definitely helped me on set, because I was, and I actually had some cinematographers say to me on set, you know, I've never had a director tell me they don't need something before. Because I'll say, I'm going to go shoot all this stuff over there. And I go, I'm never going to use that. I'd rather you go shoot that. And I think that's, I'm not saying I'm the only one who does that, but I think it's less common for a cinematographer to hear that, because that's a very editor kind of thing to say. And I think I get even better at that discipline, which is very helpful on a documentary. I get better at that with each documentary, of going, I don't need that. I need to spend my day over here. Because the tendency in a documentary is just sit back and just shoot. But if you can be more targeted, if you can design things a little bit more in your head, that will make for a better documentary. So I get better in that respect. By the way, you asked, what do I think of my zombie film looking back on that? I gotta tell you, my zombie short film, which is called Alice Jacobs is Dead, you can get to it on my website, has kind of become relevant all over again. I mean, yeah, it's a zombie film, but it's not really a zombie film. It's about a couple dealing with quarantine and terminal illness, and it just happens to be a zombie film. And that's how I thought of it at the time. So it's become eerily relevant. I'm not happy to say that, but I hope you all check it out. It's called Alice Jacobs is Dead.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very spooky. I will say, just flashing back to the beginning, I think it's great that I now have a clip of Lynn saying Dartmouth, Dartmouth, Dartmouth. I think I will just say that. I will put that out there whenever someone asks me where I go to college. I would rather just say it. In our last little bit of time, you also hinted at this at the beginning, sort of the classic filmmaker question. What are you working on now? Yeah. What's next for you?
Yeah. Well, with any luck, Bon Jovi, right? That might pick up again. That would be great if it does. I'll have to be more secretive about the thing that is more likely to go sooner. Exploring a project involving some material with which you are all familiar, but it would have to do with not Hamilton related, but it would have to do with theater coming back after COVID. So I mean, that's dear to me. I mean, the fact that theaters are just shut down. I've got a lot of friends out of work, and an opportunity has come up to make a film that would be about that. So even if you're not a particular fan of theater in general or this piece of theater in particular, it is a story about gathering in the dark and entertaining ourselves and what we do when we're not allowed to do that, which is kind of a big thing right now. So hopefully that'll be next. And in the meantime, I'm still writing some projects, but those are too early to tell you about.
It's the Music Man, isn't it? Okay. Anyways, we can prognosticate about Broadway until the
I'll just do any guess you do. I'm just gonna go.
Okay. Well, we've got all night.
Well, thank you. It's been such a treat, and we do have all night, and I would love to. I mean, it was all we could do just to nail down like 2 Hamilton questions instead of like 40, because I thought your film was remarkable, and I do think people should go to the PBS link on our website because there is about 50 minutes of clips. You can see a big portion of your film and how it's tied in. And what I love is how it's set up for an educational component as well for everybody. And so we actually have, this is sort of it for us for tonight. And we are so delighted that you could join us, Alex, finally, virtually. And Ariel and Katie, thank you. We have, later on in the season, we're going to actually have something completely different, Women's Adventure Tour, so an evening of shorts of women doing adventurous and exciting things. But we wanted to close on something that you had sent us from the film that we loved, and it feels unbelievably prescient and relevant. And I really love how it reminds us, like Hamilton, that one person can make a difference. And so I think we're going to run this clip as we say goodbye. So go ahead, Joe.
If you can vote, there is nothing more important than to vote. Lots of people lived and died so that you could do that.
Get out and vote.
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 Bring your friends, bring your mama, bring your daddy. Get it done.
Vote. Vote. Vote.
Hearing your voice is the most important thing.
Stay involved in the political life of our country.
Tell your friends to vote, and then tell your friends' friends to vote.
Every election is important, but believe me, this one is really, really important.
We have a responsibility.
This is your country. Own it.
Vote.
Vote.
Vote. You're right. You can do it.
Don't let anybody stop you.
And it is imperfect, and it is frustrating at times, but it is still super important that you do it.
Go and do it. Vote.
Our future depends upon you casting a ballot.
If you're inspired by Hamilton, if you're inspired by our founders, understand that the system of government they designed only works if you participate.
See you at the polls.
So again, thank you. Good night, everybody.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.